So you had these problems, and you got to a point where did you call for some kind of a showdown? I think maybe some people called it the Mother's Day Massacre.
The Mother's Day Massacre. I've been complaining to the governor and to Griffin and everybody else. And it was as Reagan was pulling off victory after victory. And more and more, the Wallace people were going into the Republican primaries and voting for Reagan. I got a call on a Friday afternoon from Joyce Braithwaite. She said, we're meeting, the governor and Griffin have called for it, and we're meeting with his staff at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, which was Mother's Day, at Metropolitan Airport. Will you put together a campaign plan that we can tell them that we want to do? Oh, they want me to run a presidential campaign in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Well, I grabbed Jerry Rowe, my right arm, and he came in the office and we sat down and we did just that. When the national convention was to be held in Kansas City, Jerry and I had gone out to advance Kansas City. What were the hotels like, the whole thing? We had a few minutes and we went to Independence, to Harry Truman's museum. And here was the caboose from the Give 'em Hell campaign of 1948.
Yeah.
Jerry's mind clicked and he said, let's do a
Whistle stop.
We put together a campaign plan. Whistle stop, plant tour. You know, we did, with the exception of the whistle stop, we reinvented the wheel. We did everything that I always did in the Michigan election. So we go into the airport on Sunday. Rogers Morton, who was the national chairman.
National Ford chairman, right?
National Ford chairman. Red Cavaney, who was the head of advance for Ford.
Bill Seidman.
Bill Seidman, who was on Ford's staff, and 2 or 3 others.
Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney, who was then Ford's chief of staff.
And maybe Peter Fletcher, the
Peter
national
Fletcher
commander.
and
Joyce.
And Joyce and the governor and Griffin and Braith and Ronnie Rieker were all
Jim
there.
DeFrancis.
And Jim DeFrancis, who was Griffin's right arm.
Right.
We sat down, and the governor asked me to explain what we wanted to do, and I laid out the thing. Well, the first thing Red Cavaney says, you can't do a whistle stop. Can't do a whistle stop. There's not enough time for the Secret Service. And I said to Griffin, Senator, will you call the president, see if he wants to do a president stop before we nix this thing? Cavaney backed off. Well, anyways, it was a massacre because, in effect, we, Milliken, Griffin, and myself, took over the campaign. Had I been willing to bet, I would have bet the day before that Ford was going to lose Michigan. If he had lost Michigan, there was no way he was going to get the nomination.
Yeah.
It was that bad, Bill. Between the Reaganites in the state with Jack Welborn,
Right.
all the Wallace people who had won the Democrat primary and stuff, I mean, it would have been a disaster. They let us take it. We did it. And magic was on that Saturday. We got on the train at Durand. We picked up every stop along the way, which was in Durand, Flint, Lansing, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, Niles, Sturgis, the whole bit. People riding on the train with us, and I have a treasured picture of it, was a guy named Bo Schembechler, who was the Michigan football coach.
Sure.
And Johnny Orr, who was the Michigan basketball coach.
Yeah.
And a girl cheerleader and a boy cheerleader, a man cheerleader from the Michigan cheerleading squad. At every stop, we brought media on, and they rode to the next thing. They had lunch with them. Everybody had exclusives all along the way. We got to finally, I think it was Niles or Sturgis was the last stop. Got on a chopper, one of the Marine Corps, and flew to Holland to end up with the Tulip Festival parade.
Right.
The next morning, we were on Air Force One, thrill of Randy and my life, as we flew to Saginaw to do a big rally at Tri-Cities Airport. The Sunday papers across the state There wasn't a Sunday paper that didn't have 100%, not a line less than 100% Jerry Ford and the Saturday campaign.
Wow. Well,
Every television station in the state carried 100% the Jerry Ford campaign.
wow.
As a result, we knocked the living daylights out of Reagan 2 days later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean...
This was May of '76,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you saved
We saved
the
Ford.
president's bacon.
He would have lost...
And even then, you still had some doubts going into that convention in August.
absolutely.
It was close,
Absolutely.
right? So what
But
happened from then on?
He lost Michigan.
Oh, he would have been finished.
It would have been done. He
Yeah.
would have said, "I'm not going to run it." He would have been Paul Lyndon Johnson 68.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, after that tremendous Ford victory in Michigan in late May over Reagan, what do you remember about that period leading up to August at the National Convention in Kansas City?
Ellie Peterson was working at Ford in Washington. She asked me to come in. I said, and she brought in a young man by the name of Jim Baker, who became Secretary of State
From Texas.
from Texas. He was the first guy I didn't feel was a Reagan man. I was ecstatic to meet him. And what I did, my job was to go through the entire state by state, what I knew of the delegations, how they were going, or where the feelings were, and I briefed him, because he was going to be in charge of vote counting for Ford.
Yeah.
Griffin was named the floor manager for Ford. I met with him and DeFrancis, who is his right arm, and they asked me to put together a plan to anticipate any parliamentary problems they could foresee. I mean, we're going to have problems on the platform or on rules or whatever, credentials and everything else. So I did. They were astounded when they got my report. I'm a thief. I got Cliff White was the architect of Goldwater's win in 1964. Mm-hmm. He wrote a book, Suite 2301 or something like that. Whatever, I don't know what the room number was, suite number was.
Yeah.
I read that from cover to cover, and I stole every idea he had and put it down for him. And so there wasn't a test that came up that we weren't at least ready to rebut. You know, the fight became the rules fight. John Sears, who was Reagan's national campaign chairman,
right,
wanted I think it was called 16C was the rule. It was a rule to make the vice president choice known before the nominating process, because Reagan had already said Senator Schweigert out of Pennsylvania, and he wanted to force Ford into making his choice. So he's trying to force
Ford into making a decision.
And there was another part of that thing that was that the person nominated, named as a nominee or as a contender, could address the convention before the convention. Now, the last thing you wanted was the great orator making bumbling Jerry Ford look bad. And so that became the test vote. And it was a brutal 2, 3, 4 days. It was brutal for 2 or 3, 4 days. As usual, Clark Reed was playing coy. Clark Reed had told Ford he was supporting him. He told Reagan he was supporting him, although everybody knew he was supporting Reagan. Anyways, the roll was called. When we got to Mississippi passed. Figured he'd be the thing. Well, at the end, we'd already overwhelmingly won it by like 899 to something. And all I could do, although he didn't hear me, I went, the train just left the station, Clark. and we beat him down on that. And that was the big thing.
Wasn't Jim Baker's role also to try and hold on to that Pennsylvania delegation for Ford? Because Ford had the Pennsylvania delegation,
I don't
and
recall that.
Reagan's picking Schweikert was an attempt to get those people to break from Ford and go with him.
He may have been. I was so concentrated on the rules and
sure. No, that's fascinating.
And they had we had put together a floor plan, and I think we had six or eight floor leaders, of which I was one. We all wore white coats and had a red hat. Mine is in the closet there.